Hello, I'm going to discuss today how I became a midwife. I've been asked this question over YouTube. I've also been asked this question a lot just in day-to-day life. I'm going to try and make this as quick as possible just to get to the main points, but it did take me a few years to do my midwifery degree, so I will try and keep it concise. We'll see how I go. So first I'll let you know my background in wanting to become a midwife. I wanted to become a midwife from the age of 12. So I was always really interested in my birth story, and which wasn't an overly pleasant one, but I was really interested in it nonetheless. And I was about 12 when my mum said, well, you know, there's a job called midwifery where you look after women having babies, and then you look after them and the babies in the first days, and I thought, wow, that is the job for me. So from the age of 12, would have been 11 or 12, I knew I wanted to be a midwife. Now I veered from that a little bit in my late teens. I wanted to be a musician and all that sort of stuff, and then when I actually went to uni for the first time, I never wanted to do nursing was not something I felt I could do. I thought, well, the jobs are very, very different. I don't want to deal with sick people. I don't want to deal with anything morbid or so just day-to-day traumas, and I just felt it was very, very different to midwifery, which it is. I mean, there's a huge amount of nursing in midwifery, but they are very different. So the direct entry degree wasn't available when I first started uni, when I was about 19, and so I started an arts degree, which I never finished, but the rest is history. So these days here in Australia, you can either do a direct entry midwifery degree, which is 3 years direct total midwifery, 100% midwifery. Obviously that includes general nursing, it includes mental health nursing, it includes in-depth anatomy and physiology, it includes special care nursery. So don't get me wrong, there's a huge amount of nursing within midwifery, but you are not then going and learning specialist nursing stuff. You are focusing on how nursing is within a midwifery context. So you do, in that degree, focus a lot more on midwifery than perhaps you would in a double degree, and certainly more than you would if you were just adding on 18 months of midwifery after doing a nursing degree. So that is what I always wanted to do. I wanted to be a real midwife and focus just entirely on midwifery. So I had done a doula course after my second child was born, and so that was in 2005, and I did that slowly. By 2007 I had finished that. I had just had my third child, and I'd had my first home birth. Now that sort of, I suppose maybe, I don't know, either it inspired me to take the leap, or I was just at a place in life where I just had my third child. I thought maybe that was the only children I was going to have, and I just wanted to get going with my career. I can't remember exactly what motivated me, but I know I did apply to every uni offering the direct entry midwifery degree. I sat the STAT test, which you don't need to sit for most universities, but it just looks good on your application. It's just an exam type aptitude test that you can sit just to sort of increase your, just show that you are able to handle a university course, I suppose. So I did that. I also wrote a letter. Obviously I was a mature age student because I was over 21. I was 26 when I was applying, and I wrote a letter explaining why I wanted to do midwifery, explaining life experience, work experience, my past university experience, why I didn't complete that degree, and also included university transcript from my first degree, or attempt thereof. Okay, so then I waited. I got a first round offer for a university that was a little bit of a distance, a little bit of a drive. It was going to be a lot of commute every day, and but I was willing to do it, so I went and signed up for that one. Then shortly after that I got accepted also to a university interstate offering the midwifery degree online, but you would have to go there probably twice a year for workshop sort of things, and then you would also have to organise your own clinical placements in your own state. Now, because I already had children, I was a bit worried that, you know, the travel and all that sort of stuff. So, but I was at that point umming and ahhing as to whether I would do the one here, which I'd have to do over 2 hours of driving every day anyway, or whether I'd do the one online and have to perhaps go interstate for a few days twice a year. So I was sort of wondering, and then I got a second round offer to the university that was my first choice, that was 10 minutes down the road, a brilliant university, worldwide, highly respected university, and so I definitely took that. So I remember the day that I went to sign up and get my student card, and I took my youngest, who was 7 months at the time, and then there was I think there was a barbecue, and there was a lecture to welcome everybody, and that included the nursing students and the paramedic students and the midwifery students. And I remember sitting in this big lecture theatre just listening to this inspirational welcome speech saying, you know, you're here, this is the start of it, and you're going to be leaving with, you know, your professional title. And I just remember sitting there beaming, just so excited and, you know, ready to go, really gung-ho. So I have made lots of notes, so excuse me if I keep glancing down. They're not very neat notes either. So I started my uni degree in 2008, and within weeks of starting I was actually pregnant with my fourth child, which is funny because I had said when I started, I said, right, I'm doing this in 3 years flat. I'm not having any children while I do my degree. If we have more, which I did want a fourth child, but I'm just going to be focused and get this degree out of the way. So life doesn't happen how we plan. And I was pregnant for that entire year. That was a stressful year. I didn't have any clinical placement because you don't in first year. You had a 2-week nursing block, just to get the general stuff clear in your mind, like doing blood pressures and all that sort of boring stuff. And I completed that earlier on in the following year because at the time I was going to be quite heavily pregnant, I believe. So so I didn't have any clinical placement, but I was full-time, and it was all very new for us as a family for both of us to be so busy. So my husband was working evenings, and when I was at uni he was looking after the little ones that year. That's how we worked it out. We didn't have to use childcare. And yeah, it was very busy. So our fourth child was born in the December of after my first year of uni. So I would have done exams in, say, October, November, and then he was born in December. So that worked out quite well, but I got really bad carpal tunnel from doing my exams, from writing so much, so that wasn't fun, but oh well. Okay, so the following year, so 2009, I went part-time. I did have to do 2 blocks of clinicals. They weren't midwifery clinicals. I pushed those back again. I did my nursing block and then I did my mental health block. And we had family helping out with those blocks as far as looking after the kiddos. It was very stressful just for those blocks, especially the first one because Samuel, my fourth, was only 4 months old, I believe, and I was breastfeeding and everything. So to be home with him and be a part-time student, then to be full-time for that block was, you know, I was having to pump and everything. But we just did it, and my husband went back to work. I'm thinking that maybe he started studying that year, yeah, I think he was starting his postgrad studies in teaching, so we were busy. Then 2010 I totally took off, and we were actually expecting our 5th child, and he was born in July, and that was a wonderful year. My 3rd child was starting kinder that year, so you know, kindergarten, which is before school, whatever country you're in, I'm talking about the place you go to before school. It's not school, it's kindergarten. And it's weird hours, so she went for, say, 3 hours 3 or 4 days a week. So I was having, it really cuts into the day, so it was good to be home for that year. Also, my firstborn started school that year, so my very first child starting primary school, having a baby, having someone in kinder. Okay, so 2011 was one of our biggest years. I had 3 children I had 2 children in school, and then I had 3 children in childcare. In Australia, childcare is subsidised, but they don't account for the fact that if you're a student, you're not just a working person, you're actually not earning an income, you're actually paying out, not just for childcare, you're paying out to complete your uni degree, for the travel expenses, especially if you're doing clinical placement, your uniform, your equipment. So financially, we didn't do anything else, that's the thing. If you're going to do a degree while you've got kids and the other person's working, you have to that's your life. So on the weekends, we put a lot of emphasis on family time at the weekends, but we would go for walks, we'd take the kids to the park, we weren't spending money. So we just did what we had to do. We made sure we ate well, and I did a lot of freezer meal prep, and we just got through it. At the very start of that year, so the night before I started clinical placement, our fridge broke. Now, I didn't have any money to quickly go and get a new fridge. I didn't have time to get it repaired. We were just about to go flat out for the year, right? We're all prepared. But that week I'd seen some little bar fridges at our local Woolworths for, I believe, like $150, $200, something like that. So our fridge died. I went out, I got a bar fridge, brought it home. That's the fridge we had for the year. So we had 6 people in our house, 1 bar fridge. We were flat out busy, and I was having to do extra shopping because we could hardly fit anything in this fridge. And I think like our dishwasher wasn't working that year as well. So we we were just in survival mode. So I was doing clinical placements 2 days a week, plus going to university. My husband was working, and also the clinical placements I was doing that year, I was going around to 3 different hospitals. I was also working shift work. Sometimes I'd have an early shift, sometimes an afternoon shift. I just had a couple of night shifts, luckily. They're dreadful. And we also only had one car that everyone could fit in. We had 2 cars, but only one that we could like drop all the kids around with, because we had 5 kids then. So if I had a late shift, for instance, my husband would go to work in the little car. I would take kids to school in the big car. I'd, do whatever I had to do, organise dinner for that night. Then I'd take the little kids to childcare. Then with the big car, I would drop the big car at my husband's work, switch cars, and I'd go to work. I'd go to clinical work, and he would have the big car to then pick the kids up from school and childcare after he had finished work. It was a crazy year, but we really thrived as a family. We didn't suffer. It was hard at times, really, definitely, but I wouldn't want to do it again. But I'm glad I did it, if that makes sense. Okay. And I'd say one of the really difficult things about that year was initially putting my 7-month-old, my youngest, into childcare. The first morning I dropped him off, it was very early. I had an early shift. I had to drop them all off at 6:30 in the morning. It was still dark, and I'm handing my 7-month-old to a stranger, and it was horrible, and I still feel like a bit guilty about it to this day. He thrived in childcare. He absolutely loved it. And he's just always been a bubbly, happy-go-lucky sort of little guy. And I also managed to continue breastfeeding him. So he was 7 months when he started childcare. He was my longest breastfeeder. He went for 2.5 years despite us being so busy. So we just did it. Okay, so 2011, we did it, but it had been really tough, and I decided to just take a break again, that I'd take family leave. Just, I thought, well, I can finish my degree next year, but I think it would be best to just take family leave and just have a year that I can focus on my children. So that's what I did. And so 2012, I had my second and last family leave from university, 5th child. 2012 is when my 3rd child was starting kindergarten. All right, so there we go. 2012, that was one of the reasons I took time off in 2012. 2012 was funny too. I said, my husband and I decided we would like a 6th child, and I said, I want a girl in January of 2013. So we ended up having a girl, Layla, in January of 2013. So 2012, I was pregnant for a lot of that as well. And I had one in kinder, I had kids in school, and then I was able to have the others home with me. And that was lovely. I loved it. I loved being a stay-at-home mum. I was just basking in it. So it was this year that I honestly felt like I lost some momentum. Now, yeah, it probably wasn't ideal in a university, getting your degree, keeping the momentum going. It wasn't ideal, but I think it was good that I took the time off, and I needed to. But I did contemplate giving up uni, and I contemplated it for many, many, many months. I knew that if I didn't, I would have to go back, and I'd have another newborn, and I knew I'd be part-time, and I'd push my last year of clinicals back 1 year, but it was, I was feeling just almost like I didn't even know if I wanted to be a midwife anymore. I was a little bit just shocked by the whole process, I suppose. because in 2011, when we were so go, 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 2012 we got to stop, and I think sometimes it's only when you stop that you realise what you've just been through. So I contemplated stopping entirely. And I talked to my husband, I talked to my in-laws, I just sort of pondered it for months and months on end, and it got to the point where if I was going to go back, I had to re-enroll for the following year, and there's a deadline for that. And in the end, I re-enrolled because I didn't want to regret not having done it. So that, in the end, is why I finished my degree, because I suppose maybe not even a strong will, but fear. So in January of 2013, Layla was born. I didn't do clinical placement during 2013. I only did a couple of subjects because I didn't have too much to finish. So I was able to take her to lectures with me, and I had other children in school. By this time I had 3 children in school, and then I had 1 in kinder and 2 at home. So, and the kinder child is obviously home a lot as well. So I think I did one of my subjects online. That was really good that was offered online. I think I only had to go in once a week, and I'm trying to figure out how we managed that. I know I didn't have to use childcare that year, so I'm thinking that maybe my in-laws were able to help out. Honestly, I can't even remember, but it was a lot less full on that year, and I only had 1 year to go after that year. So in 2014, I was finally in my last year of uni, and this was going to be pretty much my biggest year, definitely. There were a couple of things going for it though, and that was the fact that I was in one hospital, and it was actually a private hospital, which meant that they gave me all early shifts for some reason. Had to do with the fact it was a private hospital. And that was wonderful. The other wonderful thing is that the hospital was really close to me, like a 10-minute drive. So I had university 10 minutes away, I had the hospital 10 minutes away. I was doing two days a week, clinical placement, plus uni, plus a whole heap of full-time blocks. Like 3, I think. And the last full-time block was a month of full-time at the end. Also this year I had to make sure I got all my birth numbers up and all the other numbers up, and if you're going to go into mid, you'll find out what the numbers are. You have so many numbers of everything you have to do. Abdo, pelps, baby checks, prenatal appointments, and mum checks, postnatal, CTG monitoring. It's not just the births. You have to get a lot of numbers up and have it all ticked off, and various other things signed. Throughout the courses also, follow-throughs. You have to find women who are pregnant and follow them through their pregnancy journey, birth journey, postnatal journey, to just get a grasp of different people's situations and different journeys, which is great in theory, but it does add a lot to the course. And I think can take away a little bit because of the added stress of it. I don't necessarily know that you're going to get a lot more out of it, depending on, the hospital situation you're working in. I do personally believe it would be a lot better if student midwives got to hang out with independent midwives and go around in that sort of context. I think that would get a greater feel for true midwifery and women's experiences. And I know some universities do that, but where I did not do that. So we're full on. I'm doing meal prep. We've got 4 children in school. Samuel started school that year, but he had a lot of siblings. Ava started school in 2011. I'll go back and say that as well, which was our other really full-on year, but Jack had already started again. So once, you know, because they had siblings there, I didn't feel as weird about not being the stay-at-home mum. And they go to before school or after school care, depending on, I think they'd go to before school care, and then they'd also go to after school care if I needed to stay back for a birth. So I was doing overtime if I knew a birth was imminent, because I needed to get my numbers up. That's just how it was. So that was great, because I was actually able just to ring up the school at the last minute and say, can you please get my kids to go to after school care? and quickly book them in with the after school care people, and that would just sort of work out, and I just pick them up as soon as I could. And also what I do, particularly in holiday times when my husband was home, or even when he'd come home in the late afternoon on any regular day, is if I knew someone was in labour, had been there through my shift, but I knew they were a few hours off, I would call back after going home, maybe organise dinner for the family, and then just run back to the hospital and try and get a birth. It sounds a bit bad, I suppose, that you know, these are just numbers to me, but that's just the way that it is. You need to get a certain number of births to be a midwife. So I was doing all early shifts, so I'd get up about 5 o'clock, get myself ready. Anthony would get up about 6 o'clock. He'd get Layla and James ready. And then it's just before 6:30, I would pop them in the car, still be dark, and I'd drive them to childcare, and then I'd go directly to work, and Anthony would continue to get kids ready at home, and then he would take them to before school care and go to work himself. Then after I would finish, because I did such an early shift, you know, it was sort of like 7 till 3, so I would finish at 3, walk to my car, get in and pick kids up from school and swing around to the childcare centre and pick kids up from childcare, take them home, and that's how we do it. So my last day clinical placements, I had managed to get all my births, all my numbers up, and the last birth that day was fabulous. The woman had this wonderful, quick, easy birth. She had this massive baby, not a graze. And it all just went beautiful, and I actually snuck out. I was able to leave a little bit early that day, and I actually just quietly walked out. I just quietly grabbed my bag and I quietly went. I wasn't interested in any big, you know, I just was so ready to go, and oh gosh, it had been so full on. I just walked to the car, I suppose, feeling lightheaded with almost disbelief that I was finally finished. So I still had things to do. I still had to hand in my clinical portfolio and get that signed off at uni, and amazing. It was, say, November, and I only had a few weeks to quickly organise Christmas because I'd just been so focused on uni. So I had then to do all my Christmas shopping and clean the house that had just been neglected for a year, and really nest, because I was just a minute, sweetie, because something I've failed to tell you is that my last year of uni I was also pregnant. Through all of that clinical placement and everything, I was pregnant with our 7th child, Josephine, and she was born on the same day as her sister Layla, but 2 years later. So she was born in January of 2015. So by the end of 2014, end of my uni, I was actually heavily pregnant as well. So I finished full on in sort of November. Then we had Christmas, and then we had a baby, and I only really had like 8 weeks to totally nest and get everything done. And I was just, I didn't even really have time to process the fact that I'd finished my degree. 2015, I was a mum. I was midwife's mum. I wasn't even willing to think about where I was going with my career. And then 2016, I had Isaac. And also we didn't have an internet for a whole year. And the other thing is, when I started my degree, I set out with a view to independent midwifery. And I thought, you know, once I finish my degree, then I'll go and sort of just hang out with independent midwives, get a feel for it, be the second midwife perhaps, and work my way up that way. And that has become, due to politics and too much red tape, it's become quite impossible for new midwives to work in any sort of independent midwifery capacity, which is just disgusting. It's disgusting, but I'm not talking about that at the moment. So at the moment, my best option for me and my family is to focus on childbirth education, which I can do independently because it's not clinical. So I'm going to do that. I'm personally not very interested in working within a hospital situation. That is my personal philosophy surrounding birth, surrounding the politics of the hospital environment. I really actually don't want to be a part of it. So I've worked very hard to become a midwife, but I always had a very clear view of the midwife that I wanted to be, and I really need to keep my integrity. I'm not willing to sell myself out. I'm not saying that other midwives who work in a hospital environment are selling out, because I'm talking about me and my beliefs and my philosophies surrounding birth and women's rights and childbirth. I'm not willing to put those aside to work for the establishment. So my new website, I had a website and it just wasn't working for me, and I have put it over to a new web host, and I'm just starting to get stuff on there. It is www.fertilewisdom.net, and there you can find a bunch of articles, hopefully a bunch by the time you see this, maybe only a few, but I'm adding them, and soon I'll be offering services on there as well. Obviously that'll only be for people in Melbourne if they are personalised in your home sort of birth education classes, and I'm thinking about doing group classes as well, but also I'm planning on doing online birth education, and there's just a bunch of information that anyone in the world can access for free as well. So hop on over there if you are so inclined. So thank you very much for watching this. I had the question, so hopefully I've answered that extensively without blabbering on for too long. If you are thinking of becoming a midwife or have recently begun your journey to midwifery, I wish you all the very best. It can be tough. Hell yes. But you can do it. And I've often likened midwifery to birth. The road of midwifery can be long and tough and painful at times, but it is also full of beauty, love, and has fabulous rewards. So all the very best to you. See you later.